this CEO that I interviewed, after she told me this story and I put it in the book, she then told me she didn't want to be identified. So I changed her name, but she's the CEO of a large telecommunications company in Europe. So I'll leave it at that. And she told me this story where early on in her career, she wasn't the CEO at the time. She was an executive working for a different organization, also a large company. And she was working for another a lady, a CEO at the time. And she was vulnerable with this CEO, and she's like, I don't have a lot of confidence. I didn't come up through the ranks in the kind of the traditional educational background. I didn't go to college. And this was over time, not like one session. She just unburdened herself. But, she was comfortable sharing who she was and what she cared about and what she valued and about her family with her CEO at the time. And over time, she would notice just like weird things happening. So one day she went on vacation and she came back from vacation and she noticed that her office used to be next door to the CEO, and all of a sudden it got moved 3 doors down. She would notice that employees on her team, like her high performers, would all of a sudden get moved to other teams without her being notified. She would be in meetings and the CEO would kind of poke jabs at her and make fun of her for certain things that she was doing. Finally, their CEO said, you know what, we need to hire you an executive coach because you're struggling in these areas. And she's like, okay, fine. So she gets this executive coach, and she finds out later that this executive coach is reporting everything that she's sharing with her back to the CEO. And finally, the CEO is like, look, we got to put you on a performance improvement plan. You're not doing a good job here. And this lady's like, I'm done. Like, I'm out of here. And I asked her afterwards, I said, you were vulnerable with the CEO, and she clearly used what you shared with her against you. Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll literally take you 1 second, and you'll get notified when more videos just like this one are available. Now, let's get back to the content. Are you ever going to be vulnerable with anybody else ever again? And she's like, absolutely. And I said, how could you say that? You were vulnerable. This woman tried to destroy your career and end you. Why would you ever be vulnerable with anybody else? And she said, because what it did is it taught me that I need to do a better job of being vulnerable and leading with vulnerability with people that are looking out for me, with organizations that align to my values and have my best interest at heart. And she said that what she did after that situation is she really just took a step back and said, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about the other person, the company, the culture, and how can I apply these things going forward to make sure that I have better experiences? And I thought that was a really powerful and important lesson that she shared. The one promise that I can make to anybody listening and watching is that at some point in your life, vulnerability will be used against you. But the good news is it's not going to happen nearly as often as you think. It will happen, but it's not going to happen all the time. And this is why, so one of the things that I talk about in the book are these 8 attributes of vulnerable leaders, and one of them is self-compassion. And self-compassion is basically this idea of how you talk to yourself, giving yourself a safe place to land, so to speak. And the reason why this is important is because if you don't have self-compassion, then in these situations that go against you, you're going to beat yourself up to the point where you're going to say, you're such an idiot, you're such a moron, how could you do this? I'm never going to be vulnerable again. If you have self-compassion, you're going to say, hey, you know what? It's okay. You can, take what you've learned, apply it somewhere else. Don't beat yourself up. Life goes on. You're going to be okay. And it gives you that kind of safety net so that you can be vulnerable again in the future. And, I interviewed a psychologist named Sim Sitkin. He's at the Duquois School of Business. And he said that in academic literature, there are 22 different definitions of trust. And every single one of them have to do with vulnerability, meaning that you cannot have trust without vulnerability. And there is a right and a wrong way to approach vulnerability. If you don't know I have this framework, it's called the vulnerability wheel, and there are 5 components in there, and I won't go through all of them, but kind of at the center of this is intention. So why are you being vulnerable? If you don't know the why, don't do it. Mm-hmm. Simple as that. But one of the other elements of that wheel are, who are you being vulnerable with? Mm-hmm. If you're being vulnerable with somebody who you don't know if they have your best intentions in mind, maybe they're out to get you. If you don't know that, or if you kind of get a bad sense from them, don't be vulnerable with them. Yeah. And too often we don't think through these different elements of why, who, the situation, we just kind of blah, 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 and that doesn't go well.